Apple's March 2023 event, what not to expect. Apple's already tossed us the brand new MacBook Pros, Mac Mini and HomePods in January without warning, so in March, when we'd first expect to be getting an event, what will we see? And what won't we see? Let's talk. I'm Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. Last spring, Apple introduced the Mac Studio with M1 Ultra, the green iPhone 13 and 13 Pro, the iPhone SE 3, and the M1 iPad Air. So what is in store this year? Well, I feel like a new colour for the iPhone is pretty much a no-brainer, although Apple struggled to produce enough of the Pro models this year because of supply constraints and nobody wants the Plus. So maybe they're actually just going to paint a bunch of the old Plus phones that they have sitting around. I think a new colour is maybe 50/50 this year, and maybe will only come to the base 14 and 14 Plus models, as they're the ones that really need that boost in interest at this point because they're the 13. We'll see. Solid maybe here. The iPad Air could get the M2, but really, is that actually going to make it sell more? And again, it'll be bumping up against just updated M2 iPads Pro from late last year. And there's no rumours of the iPhone SE this year either, with a redesigned version as good as cancelled for now that would have been picking up the design from the iPhone XR. So what's left? Macs, that's what, and maybe, just maybe, a look at that elusive AR/VR headset. On the Mac front though, we got the Mac Studio and the introduction of the M1 Ultra last time, along with the Studio Display. This time we're already hearing that the next generation of the Studio Display, the one that we've been hearing about with 27-inch micro LED Pro Motion display up to 120Hz, hasn't gone into production yet, so the next generation of that seems pretty unlikely. So what's due an update Mac-wise? The iMac for one thing, and I don't think we're going to be that lucky. The iMac was updated in spring of 2021, and by all accounts was the last product designed by Johnny Ive. Since then, he's obviously been very busy designing noses and the king's crest for his coronation. But you can tell that the iMac was one of his designs because it's just a sea of USB-C on the back there, whereas the MacBook Pros, which got redesigned by Evans Hankey and her team after he left, have got all of the I/O. I actually think that the M1 iMac design was probably actually designed around the same time as the 12-inch MacBook, way back in like the mid-2010s, but it just could never actually get used because Intel's chips at the time would have turned it into lava. It's basically a celebration of thin and about as Johnny Ive as you'll get. Now, Mark Gurman has suggested that this might get an update in late 2023, which would most likely mean M3 inside, because I'm pretty confident that's coming at WWDC, and I have a wager with Vadim from MaxTech, which may cost me my beard if the M3 doesn't arrive at WWDC. But I think we could see a slight redesign in terms of the I/O in this iMac, and dare I say it, darker colours. After the MacBook Air didn't get the light bezels that we expected, which I was hoping would have matched with that iMac, I feel like we could actually see dark bezels and maybe even a midnight option this fall. And I'm here for it. We're also hearing that the Mac Studio itself may never get an update at all, being too similar to the upcoming Mac Pro. Now, I'm not sure I buy that. I think that the Mac Studio has been really well received by the Apple community since it launched, and basically its fate rests on the fact that the Mac Pro is apparently getting the M2 Ultra. Is it just me, or does that seem a little bit mid for a Mac Pro? Now, I've said it for a while, but I'm not the only one with the idea of the M2 Ultra Mac Pro being way more expandable than people seem to think. For example, Rob Lincoln asked in iCave Answers, what are the chances that the Mac Pro consists of a high-speed, high-bandwidth backplane into which multiple M2 processor cards slot? And yes. All of the no more Mac Studio stuff seems to be because there's little point in having an Ultra Studio when there's an Ultra Mac Pro, but a Mac Studio with Macs inside it would also be very usable for probably a lot more people than the Ultra would have been in the first place, and certainly for more than would go for an even more pricey Mac Pro. But right from the start, and I mean November 2020 when I say the start, when I first talked about the Apple Silicon roadmap, I thought that Apple could well use multiple SoCs in the Mac Pro as the best way to scale the performance there. Now, it has a few advantages and even precedent in Apple's own history. The Power Mac G5s, which basically looked like the original Intel Mac Pros as well, because that's basically the design that they used, had multiple discrete processors back in the day before Intel even came on the scene. For their day, these things were insanely powerful. In terms of practicality though, the bigger a single die gets on the silicon wafer, the more likely it is to contain errors that aren't workable. Apple currently offers binned versions of the M1, M2, M2 Pro, M2 Max chips, where not all of the cores on the processors are active. Now, this isn't BMW selling you a subscription to unlock features of the car that you already bought that are there in the hardware. These are chips where some of the CPU or GPU cores aren't in use because of an error on the die, but Apple being able to sell these, albeit at a lower price, does keep the costs of their processors overall lower by raising the amount of that silicon wafer that can actually be sold usefully. That's what's called yield, which you've probably heard in some of these articles. So when you get up to the M1 or future M2 Ultra chips, there will be very few of these coming off of the wafer that are fully working. Now, my impression is that all of the M1 chips beyond the base model were actually made as Ultras in the first place and then cut down to Maxes and Pros based on the working areas, with the best available dies reserved for the Ultras. Imagine how hard it would be to get fully working M1 Extreme chips, which are basically a pair of connected M1 Ultras off of a single die. That's what multiple SoCs would make much more sense for. This way, Apple can basically keep the unified memory architecture on package, which makes the GPU and CPU tasks that are using the same data way more efficient because it doesn't have to copy them between GPU and CPU memory. For massively heavy compute tasks, the work can be shared across multiple SoCs in parallel. Now, there are some performance penalties for this, but it's very much how supercomputers work, distributing work across multiple processors, not single monolithic processors. Even AMD's Threadrippers use a chiplet design, with a 32-core Threadripper being assembled from 4 8-core Zeppelin chips on their own dies. I know this is for the 2018 one, but it just gives you the example of how it works. Perhaps Apple, though, could have completely re-engineered the Mac Pro's internals. As we've heard externally, it's basically going to look pretty similar. Now, the logic board would be replaced with what is a high bandwidth board that handles communication between multiple cards carrying those Ultra SoCs and providing power to them. That would also allow the SoC cards to have their own integrated cooling, so instead of all of the processing for the CPU and the GPU across potentially hundreds of cores being concentrated in one single place, it's spread through much more of the chassis, and the system could actually redistribute work to manage thermals between the multiple SoCs, basically staggering workflows to keep those temperatures low. That still leaves space for expandable storage inside the case, high-speed wired networking, and task-specific I/O cards for musicians, video editors, and more. And that chassis doesn't have to be thrown out with the M3 generation. When that arrives, you'd be able to get those M3 Ultra cards right from Apple. Maybe you could even mix and match between generations, pick up an M2 Ultra Mac Pro this year, add on to it an M3 Ultra card or two next year, with the M2 Ultra still usable as part of that architecture for just handing off some of that background processing to. For me, the Mac Pro is a good possibility for this event, but I'd expect that they'd want to update a display to come out with it as well, and we've already heard that the Studio is unlikely to be coming. But the 2019 got released with the Pro Display XDR, which, honestly, with a better backlight and a lower price, could make a lot of sense. 32 inches of proper mini LED goodness. And ProMotion? That might be a push because of the amount of bandwidth you just need for 6K. But it's more likely that it will come as the development machine for the big release of the year, Apple Reality. Now, I'm absolutely not expecting Apple's Reality headset to be released at the spring event, but announced and previewed makes far more sense. Now, I don't have much more new info on these. You know, it's going to be a pair of 4K displays, one for each eye, something around an M2 Pro to power it, another display on the outside to scare your mum by displaying your eyes on the outside of it, all that kind of thing. It'll basically look like you're wearing welding goggles. We still don't know what it will do and why we want it, and that is why Apple needs to start building hype way before it arrives. And devs need to start building apps. In most cases, Apple gives almost no notice of what they're bringing out ahead of time, which is why channels like mine have to sort through the rumours, see which ones make sense in the context of what Apple has done in the past, and in terms of what matches up with the parts that are in the supply chain, probably earmarked for Apple. There's a million rumours out there, and I only talk about the ones that kind of make some sort of sense. With a product like this, Apple can get the word out. None of their other products get adversely affected sales-wise by this new product, while knowing that there's a redesigned Mac around the corner might kill the sales of the current model. That makes a lot more sense. But showcasing this and saying it's out in the next 3 to 6 months might well persuade people to hold off on buying a Meta Quest or an HTC Vive. It also means that developers can start getting apps ready to go live with it, meaning that it's more useful as a device when it does arrive. APK development kits and developer hardware could all be coming in the next couple of months. And the hype, of course. The hype will be coming too. When we can actually see what Apple's been working on all of these years, the hype itself will be real, but it's not going to be cheap. Regardless of what purchase you have your eye on next, basics like a new MacBook, a HomePod, or something more opulent like food, we all know that prices are rising. That's why I've partnered with Mint Mobile for this video to help save you money, thanks to that guy from those movies, Ryan Reynolds, because he owns it.
Hey there, it's Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. Enticing, right?
You can switch to Mint Mobile today and get premium wireless for as low as $15 a month without sacrificing your coverage, your speed, or your data, because they're built on America's largest 5G network, keeping costs low by selling directly online without retail stores or salespeople. They just get me. Switching is super easy, and with a digital eSIM, and all of the iPhones since the XS have supported eSIMs, you can sign up and activate right now on your phone from the comfort of your home. No standing around, and you can keep your current device and phone number. And if you need a physical SIM, Mint Mobile will ship you one free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint Mobile will show you how much data you use each month and recommend the right plan to save you money, or check out their modern family plan. Super affordable and starting at just 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/iCaveDave in the description, and you'll get premium wireless starting at just $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need to on your wireless bill and start saving with my partner, Ryan Reynolds. Mint Mobile. Thanks to Mint Mobile for supporting the show. So thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on what we are going to see at that Apple event down in the comments section. Use hashtag iCaveAnswers with any questions that you've got for me, and I would love to answer them in the next video. Thank you so much for the Patreons, and we will see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks, and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.